Yeah, 250 is just the build-out cost, not including the city fees and getting the sewer connected. That's just a building. Yeah, so you're looking at 300 grand easy.
Okay. Well, I know that you guys would.
Ready?
Yeah. Weren't you having?
All right, everybody. You ready? All right, everyone. Welcome to the November 2nd regular meeting of the Planning Commission. I'd like to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ariana, report on posting the agenda and roll call, please.
The agenda was posted on Thursday, October 26, 2023 at 6:25 p.m. Roll call. Commissioner Ellie, absent. Commissioner Fugazi,
Present.
Commissioner Leongard, Commissioner Lewis,
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Here.
Vice Chair Kushner,
Here.
Chair Bondal.
Here.
And then just as a friendly reminder to the commission and speakers, if you could please turn on your mics when speaking. Thank you.
Ariana, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda?
There are no speakers.
Oh, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, afterwards.
Just a reminder, we've got 3-minute time limit for public comment.
Sorry, really quick, can I please have you come and fill out a speaker card so I can start the timer on the system, please? We have one speaker, Gary Walton.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I'm here tonight for the Miller Red Barn Association. It's a project that we've been working on.
Sorry, is your mic on?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to repeat, my name is Gary Walton. I'm on the board for the Miller Red Barn Association. That's a project that we've been working on for about 10 years. We kind of went into hiatus after the COVID, and we kind of went underground for a while. But we're looking to really kind of come back and report to different, we talked to the Parks and Rec. We're going to be doing a presentation for them. And I'm here tonight to ask if you'd like to have a presentation from us at a future meeting where we can kind of bring you up to date on where we've been with the Miller Red Barn and where we plan on going in the future. And so we had a lot of support from the HHC, and I think we gave a presentation to the Planning Commission way back when as well. So we had a lot of support from the community, and we're kind of wrapping things up and looking at where we're going to go from here. And we'd love the opportunity to come back and just give you an update of where we've been and where we plan on going. So my request is for the chair that at some point in the near future, we would like to come back and give a presentation about the Miller Red Barn.
Great. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. Are there any other speakers?
There are no further speakers.
All right. Moving on to consent agenda. Commissioners, any questions, comments, concerns? I make a motion that we...
Yes, you can. Just a reminder to the planning commissioners, if you were not here, but you can still vote on the minutes because you're only accepting them as the minutes. You're not authenticating them. So that was a change in the rules several years ago, but you can vote on them now.
Thank you. I make the motion that we accept.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Fugazi,
Yes.
Commissioner Leongard,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kushner,
Yes.
Chair Bondel.
Yes. That passed 6-0. Thank you very much. Public hearing 6.1. Zoning ordinance amendment to modify Chapter 30, Article LIV of the Gilroy City Code relating to accessory dwelling units, Z23-05.
Thank
Erin.
you. Yeah. Good evening, Chair Bondel and Commissioners. Tonight's item is a request for a zoning ordinance update to Chapter 30, Article 54, regarding accessory dwelling units to propose amendments to be consistent with state law. So last year, two state bills were passed, SB 897 and AB 2221, and became effective the first of the year. They modified standards such as removing subjective design standards, adding greater height allowance if close to major transit, and allowing to build in the front setbacks. A new bill, AB 976, has just recently passed and will be effective the beginning of next year, January 1st. This will be removing owner occupancy requirements, so we're being proactive and proposing that update as well right now. The graphic on the screen is just to illustrate the different types of ADUs that could be allowed, shown in orange. You could have a detached ADU, you could have it attached to the primary dwelling, you could have it interior to the primary dwelling, either it could be a conversion of an interior space on an upper or lower ground floor, it could be above a garage, or it could be a conversion of a garage or accessory structure. This is a list of the summary of changes that we're proposing. Separate conveyance, right now we are amending it to allow only per section 65852.26a, which just applies to nonprofits. Deed restrictions we're removing and only requiring an affidavit. Owner occupancy requirements will be removed, as that's not going to be required per AB 976 anymore. Design standards, we're amending to say they must be objective and cannot apply standards that would preclude the construction of an 800 square foot ADU with 4-foot side and rear setbacks. The utility connection, there was a section there that referred to a state law that actually does not require separate utility connections, so we're removing this section. The number of ADUs section in the single family zone, we're amending to just match what it says directly in state law. The size for attached or internal conversions, we're revising to remove size restrictions for internal conversions, which does not exist in state law, and we're revising the language for attached ADUs to be a maximum 50% of the existing primary dwelling, but allow at least an 850 square foot one bedroom or 1,000 square foot two bedroom, as it is stated in state law. Height maximums will be amended to go from detached units were allowed up to 16 feet. They can now be up to 18 feet for locations within a half a mile of a high-quality transit corridor or major transit stop. A high-quality transit corridor means a corridor with a fixed bus route with intervals no longer than 15 minutes. This includes bus 68, which is along Monterey Road, so Monterey Road will be considered a high-quality transit corridor. Major transit stops include rail stations, so the Gilroy Caltrain station is considered a major transit stop. And the 18 feet maximum height is also allowed for multi-story, multi-family properties regardless of location. Front yard setbacks have been amended to not preclude the construction of an 800 square foot ADU with 4-foot rear and side setbacks. There's a section about streamlining approval for ADUs, and it had specific requirements. Those specific requirements do not exist anymore, so that section has been removed. All ADUs are streamlined in general, and they follow state law requirements where they're approved within 60 days of a complete application. We amended the shared bathroom section for a JADU that shares a bathroom with the primary dwelling unit, and interior entry to the main living area is required. And we've added the definitions for high-quality transit corridor, major transit, and objective standards. So this is just a high-level summary of the code changes proposed to be consistent with the state law and the recent bills that were passed. So in conclusion, staff's recommending that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council that they find the amendments are statutorily exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines, Section 15282H, for the adoption of an ordinance regarding second units, and recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving the amendments to the Chapter 30, Article 54 regarding accessory dwelling units. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Commissioners, any questions?
The front yard setback, is that only for new construction? I mean, the entire new construction, the entire unit? Or somebody can pick it up an old house and build a room on the front?
So we can't apply the front setbacks if it precludes building an 800 square foot ADU. So we would first look at, could they still build the 800 square foot ADU in the rear? While, is it possible to do that? If they can't, and the only way to do that is to go into the front setback, we would have to allow that.
And I think she's also asking, the setback requirements, they are for existing homes, and you're adding the ADU, the detached or the attached, those setbacks, or if you're doing new build, the setbacks will. So it doesn't matter if it's an existing residence and then you're putting the ADU somewhere on it, or you're attaching, or you're going inside. Those setbacks are for new or existing residents, parcels.
So the setback would be, if it was in the front, would be 4 feet from the sidewalk then?
No, so all ADUs are supposed to at first not encroach into the front setback, which is 26 feet from face of curb. So we will first look to see if the ADU can be built anywhere else on the property.
Okay.
If not, they would be allowed to encroach into the front setback. There's no limitation on that encroachment into the front setback. I mean,
So
technically, it could be to the property line.
And my understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is just procedural. We have absolutely,
Yeah.
our hands are tied by the state. This is being mandated by the state.
Right.
And that includes all of the elements that you have highlighted.
Correct. All of this was just straight from looking at the state law changes. We also reviewed how HCD is reviewing other city ordinances right now and the type of comments they're giving those other cities. So we're addressing that.
So the question I have is, you just said two different things there.
Yeah.
You said one was from state law, the other is how they're interpreting things at the HCD. And so this is a mixture of both of those things? Or I guess what I'm getting at, the real question is this a result of mandates, right? Or is this simply mirroring what the state has at a state level, right, for these particular types of restrictions and whatnot?
They are mirroring what is at the state level. Like all of the amendments here were taken straight from the state law. But some we've taken just in noticing what HCD has commented to other jurisdictions. It's highlighted some other issues in our code that we realized were not consistent with state law. So it helped us to identify that.
To follow up on that, what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's a set of regulations at the state that kind of go over the whole state.
Mm-hmm.
Certain other cities or jurisdictions could impose those same or even impose more than some of those regulations at the state, unless it's a regulation from the state that says a city must not exceed this, correct?
You really can't impose more than what's in the state law, unless it's less restrictive than what's in the state law. We can't go more than what the state law says.
So then which things are not aligned with state law and aligned with HCD, kind of reading the tea leaves?
I mean, all of these things are in state law. I just think the new state bills were not, some of these things were not as a result of the new state bills, but they are in the law, and we just didn't have the wording word for word like it said in state law, such as the number of ADUs or the utility connection section, that we put our own wording into that, and it wasn't what was in state law. But HCD has commented on that, so now we've just revised our language to match what's in state law.
So you've updated to match what, and then you've included
Yeah.
the most recent and what will also become effective in January.
In many cities, when their housing elements were being reviewed, HCD also commented on on the ADU ordinances, so that's very common. And about we can be more restrictive than the state, we just can't be more lenient. So, for example, it could be up to 1,200 square feet for a detached, but we have 1,000. Yeah, so, and I was asking the chair, because I think when we adopted the ADU ordinance a year or so ago, I think when it got to council put the 1,000 foot. So we can't say you can have up to 30. We can be more restrictive. We can't just be less restrictive.
Exactly, and that's the point I'm making. Is that's a perfect example. Thank you so much for bringing that one up. Which is the state says it's 1,200 square feet, and we say here we want it to be 1,000 square feet. What you just stated was that no, if the state says it's 1,200, we have to have it at 1,200. And so what I'm trying to get at with all of this is if one of these things that you showed up on the list there is what the state has, but we can be slightly more restrictive on it, which of those are they that would be similar to the square footage, let's say, on ADUs?
I guess I meant more restrictive, as in, though they say you can have up to, some of the items they may say cities may do this or can have up to this, and like the square footage for up to 1,200. Yes, we could be restrictive because they said we may have up to, but they also say things like you have to have a minimum 1,000 square foot, 2 or more bedroom, or 850, 1 plus bedroom. So we can't go more restrictive and say that maximum size is 700 square feet or something. You can't be that. You can't restrict in that way.
Regarding the front yard setback, we are communities, they have a kind of a style, and if somebody wants to build another unit on the front, that's going to be completely different from everybody else. So is that something you can remove from the list?
Well, we can't remove the allowance into the front setback. The thing we can do, maybe to your point, is that we do say that the style needs to be architecturally compatible with the main primary dwelling. So, I mean,
that's
as far
very
as
vague.
we can, look at that in terms of maybe materials or that sort of style, but we can't. We can't say it can't be in the front setback.
You've still left me completely confused now.
I think
What things are like the 1,000 versus a 1,200, and what things are not? When you started the presentation, it was more or less, well, all of this is more or less mandated from the state. We've got to rubber stamp it, et cetera. Then when I heard from City Council, it's a little bit different, that we can be more restrictive on certain things, but we really don't have guidance from you as to which of those things, if we didn't want them to be, for instance, you actually mentioned the square footage size of the different types of units. Part of that regulation says that it's 50% of the main. What says it has to be 50? Is that one of the mays, or
it
is that?
It is in the state law about the 50%.
But what I'm trying to explain to you is that if it's all of them are like, hey, we can't do anything about this, great. If some of them are like the 1,000 or 1,200, it would be good for, I think, us up here to know that.
All of the items I have mentioned tonight are directly from state law and directly the language in state law.
But they are not specific. For example, the front yard setback, it doesn't say, okay, we allowed front yard setback, but has to be, I don't know, 20 feet from the sidewalk, or something more specific, because I didn't see any numbers there.
It's because the state law says you can't impose a front yard setback. You can't preclude an 800 square foot
Because
ADU.
we also have to take in consideration the safety, like in case of a fire, somebody has to go from somebody's on the back unit, and then somebody's blocking the front because it's another unit. So, and it will make this like kind of a longer house or multiple units.
They have to
I
have
actually
at
have a
least-
question specific to that.
They have to have at least a 4-foot side and rear setback, at least, so that it wouldn't be completely blocking the front.
So on page 16C3, it talks about sufficient for fire and safety 4 feet. Sufficient for fire and safety. And my question is, what is the definition of sufficient on that?
Sorry,
So
16C.
on page 16, it says the side and rear setbacks are sufficient for fire and safety. Is there a definition then for sufficient? Because I think that that's what my colleague is asking about in terms of, how do we know whether or not it's safe, with regards to fire, but it doesn't define sufficient.
Yeah,
Is
well,
there a
so-
definition?
It would have to be
Yeah,
an interpretation of what's sufficient.
Well, so in the California Building Code and Fire Code, they don't use the term setback, but it's called fire separation distance, and that's where, I think this is referring to that, but without using those words. So it will still have to meet, building code
So
and
there
fire
is,
code.
okay, so there is something set in stone in terms of ensuring the safety for fire hazards.
Correct, yes.
And-
And the requirements are, very different from this, but it's referring to, it should still meet those requirements.
Well, and to speak to Anadora, the fire safety, if we build these things, house after house after house, these structures are very close to one another, and fire with wind and things like that, it's not then contained easily to one structure. So my question is, and I think you are answering that yes, in fact, the fire code somewhere says something that they have to be X amount of feet to make it sufficient for fire safety.
Correct, yes. Building code and fire code has those regulations based on distance and then the type of construction you would need. So if you're very close, it's likely going to require you to have full 1-hour construction, for example. But,
Okay.
there are different,
So there are
lots
different
of
modifications that are going to be imposed. And are those
Correct.
imposed by our city? Are those imposed by the state?
It's by the city. So
Okay.
the city adopts the state code, but we also make some local amendments. And when we review the building permit application for these structures, that's where
It has to
our
go through
building team,
fire
yes,
and-
will
okay.
review. Yes, fire prevention team will review according to all those
Yeah.
requirements.
Okay, and then another question I might have is, hypothetically, if we do not pass this, it then goes to city, they would more than likely pass it. But hypothetically, if we didn't and the city council didn't, what would the consequences be?
Then we would have an ordinance that's not compliant with state law. HCD reviews it. I don't know all the consequences. I'm not sure if you're aware,
And
Jolie.
then, well, and then the fallback would be that we would be left with the state law.
Can we request, if we will not pass, request for more details on the writing, for more specifics?
I wouldn't recommend that tonight because we're trying to be as compatible with the state law as possible, and the more that we wordsmith it, we will get comments back from HCD that we're putting too much subjective standards into it, or we're not. They will comment on it. So,
And that's okay, right?
well, we don't want HCD saying that our housing element could be in jeopardy or our ADU law is invalid.
It's
Sorry,
for the
I-
next meeting, is that Like, are we in a, like a kind of pressure point, or like one more meeting will make a difference?
Well, you're asking for direction for us to change this wording when we're taking the wording from the statute, and you're not being very clear with what you want changed.
I think they are not being very clear. For example, this front yard setback, does the state to give
Commissioner
numbers?
Lingard, I do apologize, but the mic's not picking up your audio.
Oh, it's on, yeah. Do they specify any numbers so we can work with?
We don't, but let me pull
So
up what
that
it
means we
says.
can put some numbers there, or?
No, they say that you can't impose any kind of zoning standards that would preclude the construction of an 800-square-foot ADU with 4-foot side and rear setbacks, including, and a front setback is one of those standards that we can't put any minimum requirements on.
So if the typical setback is 26 feet,
We start with that, and we try to see that if they can build an 800-square-foot.
so that would have to be a 400 feet wide property then to accommodate
That
the
is a
800,
space,
right?
not necessarily, right?
Well, is that 800 square foot, that's a minimum, right?
An 800-square-foot ADU, that's the minimum they have to be able to build.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they take, is there anything on the law that says we have to take in consideration the cultural, the architecture of the city, or some historical elements that we can include on that?
No, we can't impose anything subjective. We can only impose objective standards like color, height, and even saying that it needs to be compatible with the main structure. That is a little bit discretionary. So we can't do anything that would be an impediment to allow ADUs to be approved and built.
Can we remove one of the items and just keep the other ones and see what comes back?
That can be your decision, but I think that we will get it rejected.
HCD needs to review this ordinance after we adopt it, and they can still further comment. And when you say remove something, what are you talking about removing?
Remove the item, the front yard setback item.
So if we remove it, HCD will comment, or we'll just be bound by the state law that allows ADUs in the
And
front
then
yard.
it's okay, then we can work with that, right?
No, you need to follow the state law, but let's,
Can I ask another follow-up question? Again, I'm still stuck on the 1,000 square feet versus 1,200 square feet, where we were able to, reduce it down. And I just want to make sure that I've got it right, that every single other thing in here, including, for instance, that 50%, why could we not make it 30%? I get that HCD might not like that, right? And that's a whole nother topic as to whether or not. But what parts of this are actually for sure mandated, and they have to be that as in alignment with the state law, and what things are things that we are doing because this is what it is in state law, we want to match up to that, and we want to be in the good graces of HCD.
All of these
That's where I'm trying to-
all of these items are word for word from the state law.
Except the 1,000 square foot.
But that's not something new I'm
You're not
proposing.
changing it, yes, I know,
Yeah.
but it was changed before this.
Right.
If I can kind of add on to that clarification, because staff did go to, update this about 2-3 years ago. And from the bills that were passed last year, we didn't get to update this. And from the bills that were just passed, we thought, it would be efficient to do this all at the same time. So the things that we knew the city wanted before, that wasn't touched. So really, we updated this to meet the most current state law requirements. That will become effective January 1st also. So, yeah.
I had a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Is your question answered?
Do I feel satisfied in the answer?
No.
Not necessarily,
No.
but I'm...
Okay, let me try rephrasing it. I think what he's asking is, what in here, is there anything in that first slide that you showed us with all the different items? Are any of those bullet points, do we have flexibility at all? And, in modifying anything? Size, setback, distance, height,
Yeah, to be more
50%,
specific.
anything. Is there anything there that can be modified slightly that would still meet state requirements? Or is everything that you have listed as is and stated as is set in stone by the state?
So I'm looking at these items, and all of them are in the state law. We'll just say the only one, and I don't think you guys care about this one, is the deed restriction. And it says in state law that we can require deed restrictions. We made the decision to not require deed restriction and just do an affidavit because we felt like that was kind of making the process more cumbersome, and a lot of people have been really happy to just go with the affidavit instead.
That was actually on my list too, though.
Okay. But does that help with
Absolutely.
clarifying it?
If
Okay.
that is the fact, that there are no
Okay.
more that are similar to the 1,000, 1,200 square foot one other than the deed restriction one, then yes, it does clear it up.
Unfortunately not, I mean, I know everybody is concerned about the front yard setback, I'm sure, and tried to look at that too. Is there any way we could put something in there, 4 feet or something? But it specifically says in the state law that we can't have a zoning standard that precludes the construction of this 800 square foot ADU, including front yard setbacks. It says blanketly, including front yard setbacks.
In the prior versions of the ADU law, front yard was not addressed.
Right.
And it caused a lot of confusion. And so when they amended it, they said, no, we really mean it. And if you can't build the 800 square foot, the minimum size somewhere, then you get to go into the front yard.
But see, that's where I see the problem here, because it says, okay, we need to allow at least 800 square foot, but over here doesn't specify anything, so somebody can build like say I want to build a 3,000 square feet, and if you doesn't say that, we can allow, we can add that as a maximum for the front yard specifically to be 800 square foot.
Well, we
square
say
feet.
that they can only.
Where? That's the.
They're
So-
allowed to have 800 square feet. That is, we can't preclude them from coming
but
in
we
and
could-
at
we
least
don't
doing
have that
800
more.
square feet.
In the general requirements, 30.5420 E, it goes on in one of the red lines that I added. It says zoning standards and requirements will be modified if they would preclude the construction of at least an 800 square foot attached or detached dwelling unit with 4-foot side and rear setbacks. So it's just for 800 specifically there.
Minimum.
But, true, but they can, but it's just for, zoning standards will be modified for an 800 square foot ADU.
So why that number is not here? Like, we can set a maximum of 800 square foot for the front yard, and then,
And then setbacks, it's 30, 54, 30, F1. An accessory dwelling unit must not encroach upon the required front yard area unless it would preclude the construction of at least an 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit with 4-foot side and rear yard setbacks. So it's clear on the 800.
yeah, at minimum. Yeah, so, but we can put as a maximum. Or at least like 800, yes, we can build on the front.
But doesn't that speak to the ADUs and the ordinance that we have on the ADUs? So there's the minimum for we have to allow a minimum square footage for a 1-bedroom, but there is a maximum for 2-bedroom. So the maximum, isn't that already stated?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the general
Okay.
maximum is 1,000.
So-
That applies to all.
To all of them. So they cannot build a 3,000 square
No.
foot because the ordinance only allows up to 1,000 square feet.
Right.
Am I reading that correctly then?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take my whole front yard.
I mean, it's probably not going to happen, most likely. I mean, this has been in place the whole year, and nobody's come forward with doing it.
So what about HOAs? Can an HOA prevent it or no?
They cannot,
Okay.
unfortunately.
I still have an additional question since we're off of that one of the front yard, which is the affidavit question. So can you get into a deeper explanation of why you would change that?
So the deed restriction, it was it was time consuming and an issue for people that don't really understand the process of going down to the county and getting that recorded on their property. I mean, that was really becoming a setback for some people getting their permit through. I mean, the deed restriction, all that's saying is that they can't rent the unit for less than 30 days. And they can't separately sell the ADU. I mean, those things are already.
But that's an important disclosure if you buy a property, right? To have it actually on, written as a deed restriction as opposed to an affidavit that one property owner then says, hey, I'm not going to do this, right?
Sure, if that's important to
No, I'm
you,
asking
but-
you, I mean, isn't that the reason why those exist, is so that it rides with the property and it's much more apparent to somebody else who might purchase the property that this is a restriction on that particular property?
I don't think that would also be something that people are thinking about when it's not even a separate parcel. So I don't see why people would assume that they could sell that ADU. It's
No,
in
but
our-
30-day, the short-term rentals, that is certainly an issue, right?
Right, but it is in our city code. There's a lot of city code
Sure.
regulations that are, it doesn't go with every single property. We have the affidavit on file. If there was ever a code enforcement case, we would check to see that someone signed this affidavit and prove that they signed and agreed to this.
Okay.
Is the affidavit, I'm assuming, is public record or is disclosed during the transaction process?
I don't know what happens between the realtor and if they disclose the affidavit, but it's just within our records.
If it's not on title, I don't think it's disclosed.
Well, then that might be a concern to me, because I think that if this is a way to prevent, if somebody's coming in from out of the area, not familiar with city ordinances that preclude someone from doing a short term, there's an event going on downtown, I can rent out this place for maximum dollar over the weekend. I'm trying to understand the imposition with a deed versus the concern I have, I guess, with an affidavit not being disclosed during a transaction.
I see the concern. At the same time, we're just trying to help streamline ADUs, and if you do want to implement that again, it will be a setback. It has held many property owners back. There are some people that don't understand the language or understand what it's asking, and it's prevented people from moving forward. So there's that. Also, I guess I would say
Stop them
that
indefinitely, so they just decided not to do it because...
we don't hear from them anymore, or months and months go by. So there's that issue. The other thing I'd say is that the code is changing all of the time. State law is changing. These things that we have and that we might be deed restricting are going to change potentially. Even as we speak, owner occupancy was part of that deed restriction, and now we're going to remove that, Maybe people change their mind on short-term rentals in the future. You don't know. And separate conveyance is actually a new bill that's being passed that cities can decide to take and make that an option if they want. So I don't know, that could be something that the city decides in the future. So that could be a change. I'm just saying these things are changing that we're deciding to put into a deed restriction that might not be relevant in the future.
Thank you.
But the end result on this is that it makes it easier for someone trying to do an ADU. We're trying to be in the good graces of HCD in terms of doing more ADUs. We want to put more ADUs on the books because it helps our numbers, and therefore that's why this exists.
That's correct.
Well, to use the language of HCD, some of these regulations they see as an impediment to housing. And so the more impediments to the development of housing, the better your ordinance will be. And that's what they do when they look at your housing element. They make recommendations for your zoning. They make recommendations about ADUs. They want to see what all you're doing to further fair housing. And so anything that could be an impediment to housing will be scrutinized by them. And so at this point, any sort of delay, they look at fees, they look at anything that could be an impediment to housing, and they want those barriers removed.
I'm done.
Commissioners, any more questions? All right, I'm going to open it to public hearing. Do we have any speakers?
There are no speakers.
All right, I'm going to close public hearing. Disclosure of ex parte communication. I sense none. There will be none.
No one called HCD?
All right.
Want to talk about it?
The floor is open for motion or more further discussion.
Might as well move forward. I mean, our hands are tied.
I think you do it.
You can do it.
Yeah, you can do it together.
Do it together?
Yes.
Okay. So I read all this? Okay. I move that we recommend that the City Council, based on its independent analysis, find that approval of the Gilroy City Code zoning amendment is statutorily exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines, Section 15282H, for the adoption of an ordinance regarding second units in a single-family or multifamily residential zone by a city or county to implement the provisions of Section 65852.2 of the Government Code as set forth in Section 21080.17 of the Public Resources Code, and recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance Z23-05 approving amendments to the Gilroy City Code Chapter 30 zoning, Article 54 regarding accessory dwelling units.
I second it.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Fugazi?
Yes.
Commissioner Leingard?
No.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kushner?
Yes.
Chair Bondel?
Yes, that passes 5-1. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business. Planning Commission annual presentation to council.
And our infamous chairs?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
You're good to go.
Okay. Good evening. So at our last meeting, the commission asked us to make a couple of amendments to the presentation. And so we added There's actually not an address on Royal Way. It's a vacant lot. So we added the parcel numbers to the slide. We also added a slide for the electronic billboard, just giving a brief description of it, stating that the application was denied by the Planning Commission and the appeal was also denied by the City Council, with the CEQA being accepted. And then I just listed some of the public comments against the project on this slide as well. Any questions about this one? Okay. And you saw that one before. And then I added the two projects that you reviewed at the last meeting, the warehouse building on Yamane Drive, providing the acreage of the site, the square footage of the building, a quick summary of what the project is, and then also indicating that this project requested a minor deviation from the height for a 5-foot increase. Anything you want to add to this slide? Okay. And then also adding the Endeavor Storage building, again with the address, the acreage, a brief description, and then some photos. How about this slide? Okay. And then finally at the end, the chair will input whatever the Planning Commission wants to say at this point. And we were asked to list city staff on the slide, so that's here.
Is Craig, is Tamburini, isn't it Tamburini?
Pam, yeah, so it's two N's, Tambernini. Everyone spells his name wrong.
So that's the correct way?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, and that's it.
So for the last slide, it's going to be a thank you to all staff. If there's anything specific you guys would like for me to say, besides they're doing a great job. All right.
Okay.
I'll fill in the blanks. Thank you, Cindy. All right, 8.1, informational items, planning division staff approvals. I think just one item.
Any questions?
All right, 9, planning division report.
Yes, I would like to give the commission an update about the warehouse you approved last time on Yamane, that's by the railroad tracks. The commission had given us some amendments authorizing staff to investigate whether parking can be moved to the west property boundary. And we did look into that. The architect was able to, create a plan that moved parking and landscaping to the west side of the site, adjacent to the railroad tracks. So the finger planters and parking were pushed to the west boundary, the west property line of the site, next to the storm drain infrastructure, and the drive aisle got shifted toward the building, adjacent to the building. And we have fire prevention team and fire operations team review that, and they are okay with moving forward with it. So, and this, so we're going to have them formally submit this, and this is consistent with Planning Commission's direction. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Assistant City Attorney report.
It's just a report on the city of Gilroy prevailed in a Public Records Act lawsuit that had been pending it started, I think, before COVID and during COVID, and it was argued in the 6th District, and the city prevailed, and so the trial court, we prevailed in the trial court. There were cross appeals, but anyway, the 6th District ruled in the city's favor, and we were found to have complied with the Public Records Act on some requests for body cam videos. So it was a long time, but I was very proud of that decision, since it was a good decision for the city.
I had a question real quick. I know that there were pending applications for a builder's remedy projects, and I know one went through.
So the update is that we had 2 preliminary applications we received earlier this year that cited the use of builder's remedy. So until we get a formal application in, that's not just that will be evaluated at the time. if it's a valid builder's remedy application. And for one of them, the earlier one, they submitted online through our online portal because we implemented our new permit system went live in June. They submitted, I think, on Tuesday afternoon, one application, and then Wednesday we informed them that there was one application missing, and then they submitted that, and then we told them about the fees due, and so they have to give us the fee payment, and then we will be proceeding through the formal review process.
Which ones are?
That the one on Hecker Pass.
So help me understand. I thought that our housing element went through and was approved. So how are they pushing this through?
Yes, we've.
Well, they submitted when the housing element wasn't certified.
But I thought we certified prior to the deadline.
It was approved prior to the deadline, but no, not prior to the deadline, no.
Well, we have, told them that the city's position is that, we have a substantial, housing elements in substantial compliance with the state law as of May 1st, and they know that is our, position, and so this will all be part of the, the formal review on the different perspectives.
What is the deadline for the other one to make their formal
The
application?
second one, the later one?
Yes.
I think it was January 1st.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that update. Any other questions?
Do you know anything about the second one as to where that location is?
Yeah, that's on 315 Las Animas.
Las Animas?
Las Animas, yeah.
All right, if there's no further questions, I am going to adjourn the meeting to December 7th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
And remember the commissioner dinner, right?
Yes,
Yes.
next Thursday.
And the deadline to RSVP is today.
Also, in your email, to your city email, today you should have received the notice of intent to adopt a mitigated negative declaration for a storage facility. So that's coming to you on December 7th, and you'll have access to that document ahead of time if you want to take a look at it. If you have any questions, let me know.
Great. Thank you, everybody.